Peabody Public Library in Columbia City with Harold Chris Lehman, who was born December 29th, 1947. Mr. Lehman served in a few different conflicts, mainly Vietnam. My name is Janet Skank. I'm the director of the Peabody Public Library. Morning, Mr. Lehman.
Good morning.
Why don't we start with you? According to your biographical sheet, you were born in Germany.
Yeah, I was born in Stuttgart. My father was a American soldier in World War II, and then he was there for the occupation after the war, and that's where he met my mother, and that's where I was born at an army hospital there in Stuttgart, Bad Camp.
So you have a family history of military service.
Yes.
Okay. And how old were you when you finally came back to the United States?
We came, I probably would have been about 4 or 5 months old.
4 or 5 months old. Okay. And did you come back to Columbia City?
Yes.
Okay. And you went to school here in Columbia City?
Yeah, started out at Coessing in 5th grade Marsh Memorial, and we moved to Indianapolis a couple of years down here for middle school, finished 8th grade at Marshall, and then went to high school at Columbia City, joined high school.
And when did you graduate from college?
Oh, not college, it was
high school, I'm sorry. That's
Columbia City joined high school, class of '66.
Class of '66. Okay. What kind of things did you study in high school?
I took the college entrance courses,
Mm-hmm.
4 years of math, English, the history, everything I needed, because I was hoping to go to college when I got out.
Mm-hmm. And did you go to college?
No, it just didn't work out, didn't have the finances, and the draft was right there, so what I ended up doing, then I went to computer programming school for a month in Kansas City, and then it was hard to find a job, so in 1966, in August, I joined the U.S. Army.
Okay, so you actually volunteered for the
Yes.
Army, you were not drafted. Okay, and you had gone to computer science before that? For computer?
Yeah, that stuff is so ancient now compared to what we have. It was using wires to tell the computers what to do.
Okay. Yeah, that is a little different than what we're doing now, isn't it?
Okay.
You actually joined the Army then. Was it something you were planning on doing?
Well, I wanted to be a pilot in the Air Force, but by the time I graduated, they changed the requirement to a 2-year college degree, so that was out. And I seen that you could be a pilot in the Army with high school education, so that's why I joined.
So that's why you joined the Army. And when you joined the Army, where did they send you? The first place they sent you?
Fort Polk.
Fort Polk?
After the induction center, you go there and get sworn in, then I was sent to Fort Polk.
Where was your induction center?
Indianapolis.
In Indianapolis, and then you were sent to Fort Polk. Is that like your basic training
Yes.
type of thing? What was that like?
It was an eye-opener. I thought maybe I'd made a mistake, and after 3 days I gave up, thought, well, there's no mistake on the papers, I'm in.
In basic training, is there any, other than the discipline and the marching and all that, is there any other kind of training that they give you? What did they do in basic training?
I don't know what they do now, but back then the idea of basic training was discipline, listening, learning to stay alive.
Mm.
That was the biggest thing. And I remember one thing they told us towards the end. They said, some of you are going to go over there and be shields for somebody else. It's the Vietnam time. He says, you need to go in the right state of mind, and you come back in the right state of mind, so you don't get all screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
But things are different for each person.
And how long did that basic training take?
It was 9 weeks.
9 weeks training, and then what happened?
And then, since it was on the way, I was allowed 4 days leave to stop here at home before I went to Fort Eustis, then to start in the helicopter maintenance on the Hueys. And after that course, I don't even remember how many weeks it was. It started in October. They taught us everything, basic stuff, and then the helicopter for 3 weeks, and then they took some of us out and said, you guys are going to go on to the Chinooks, CH-47s, and that was a 4-week course.
And that was maintenance on those. You weren't flying those.
No, there was something wrong with my color vision. I didn't pass enough numbers on the test, but I didn't know it at the time, and I never knew why. There was 2 of us that failed, and we ended up together over at Fort Eustis, and when I could look at my medical records, then when my eyes were cleared up after being dilated, I was able to see that I didn't pass enough numbers on the color test.
Mm-hmm. Is that something you had even thought about doing with your life, doing maintenance, mechanical type of thing?
Actually, I took tests at the Air National Guard. Mechanical was my lowest aptitude. The U.S. Army, even though I was going in to be a pilot, I had to take all these tests anyway, and that was still my lowest mechanical aptitude, was my lowest aptitude.
Wonder how the Army decided that was what you were going to do.
That's because actually what happened, since we were rejected for flight training, they were going to send us to officer candidate school, and I'm thinking, oh, I don't want to do this infantry stuff again. After being there, I thought maybe I can get into tanks or something like that. So they sent us down to some place, and the lady we were supposed to see was upset about something that day, and we came to see her, and she was upset. So you need to go see this guy. Oh, failed warrant officer candidates will send you to maintenance school. So that's where we went instead of officer school.
Okay. And how long did you spend there? And where was Fort Eustis, by the way?
Virginia.
It's in Virginia. How long did you spend there?
From, let's see, October to sometime in October, let's see. It'd been around close to the 1st of October until about the beginning of March.
Okay.
Because I went home for 2 weeks before I went to Vietnam then.
Okay. So you did, after that, after your training, you came back home here for 2 weeks?
I believe it was 2 weeks. It might have been one. I don't remember anymore. But
And then you went directly to Vietnam?
yes.
And where did you wind up there?
Okay, we come in country to land at the airfield called Ben Hoa, and they take us out to the Army Camp Long Bien, and that's where we get our processing to where we were going to go. And actually, I met a fella at the Army Oakland Terminal, and we rode over on the same airplane, and we ended up being on the same helicopter then as gunners together. But so after about 3 or 4 days there, then we were sent up to Nha Trang. That was the transportation headquarters for the 14th Trans Group. And then we went on to Nhon, which was where the 540th was. It was a transportation company, and their main purpose there was to repair helicopters, put helicopters. There's new helicopters come in from the States, and they assemble what they needed to and put them out into service, fix those that couldn't be fixed in other areas. And sometimes they'd be damaged bad enough and they'd be shipped back to the States, and some were crashed so bad, these aircraft, they had a boneyard. And the company I was in had a recovery platoon. Our job was to go out and pick up ground aircraft and bring these things back to our unit so they could repair them, or if they weren't too badly damaged, pick them up and take them back to the company where they came from, and they'd fix them there.
So you'd been in the service basically for less than a year before you had to start doing all this, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Culture shock?
The heat was a culture shock to start with.
Okay.
And the funny thing of it is, I can only remember basically the good times. To me, when I think of Vietnam, I think of sunshine and nice weather. I know it rained, but I cannot recall any time raining, but I know it did. But it just doesn't show up in my head. I just can't remember any rainy days, but there were some.
Okay. When you were there, did you get to do I mean, surely they didn't have you on base for 24 hours a day.
Where we were at that time at Nhon, it used to be a Japanese fighter base during World War II. On the west side of the runway, the Air Force had a terminal and stuff over there, and that's where all the transit aircraft came in. Then the east side, where I was at, is where we had the Army, and there was also a Korean post there too.
Okay. You said that you were tasked with going out and recovering downed aircraft.
Yes.
What all did that involve?
What it is, if like our motto said above the door at the recovery platoon, you crash and call, we'll dash and haul. We weren't the only ones that did it. They had recovery throughout the whole area, but we had an area of responsibility, call it. So in other words, if a helicopter or something has a malfunction and it goes down and it can't fly, somebody goes out and get it. Usually we would have a recovery team out there ahead of us to rig it up, so when we came in, they would hook us up. And we carried 2 guns, and our guns were only for defensive purposes only. They were not to pick a fight with anybody. If it looked like it was really bad, we'd put a tail gun on it. And usually we had 1 or 2 escort gunships following with us that circle around, because the helicopter would stop and be hovering. At that time, Chinook cost $1.25 million, and we had 6 crew members on there. So there was a lot of value there. But my first mission I went out on, I was very scared and tight, because I went out as a tail gunner. Actually, I had never fired, because the guys went to Chinook school never got to fire a machine gun. And I'd gotten in with the first group that was there, and I'd been working with these guys, went to pick up telephone poles once, and then Mr. Saylor came in. He said he needed a tail gunner, and he wanted somebody that shot the machine gun. And he said, I believe the guy's name was Brown, did you ever shoot the machine gun? He said, yes, we're at gunnery school. No, not good enough. And well, Johnny Fowles jumped up and said, we got Lehman over here. He said, yeah, we got Lehman, we'll take him. Well, I'd never even fired one, so this was going to be the first thing. Plus we had gunships, and there's infantry on the ground, and I'm scared, what if I make a mistake? Everybody in the helicopter gets killed, everybody on the ground gets killed, and I got to walk back and tell them what happened. It's my fault. I feel like I'm going to live right too. But that's what went through. I was 19 years old, but so that was my first time. And then you get better. But a lot of times, if we'd go out, the other gunner, Walt Culbertson, they thought we were kind of like crazy boys. We just were eating it up. And we figured, well, we need to get a distinguished flying crosser. People don't think we're doing our job, which I would say at this time I used to feel that I needed to do more, but never really realized that somebody has to cook the food. Somebody's got to deliver bullets. Somebody's got to deliver fuel. Somebody's got to deliver parts. Someone's got to take care of our housing. Somebody's got to get us clothing. Somebody's got to get us paid. And all those people were important, and good for them. They had a job, but at that time I didn't realize that.
And we'll probably get into that. I'm still a little confused on when you said recovery. Did you actually go in with like another helicopter? And
we were in the helicopter. The best way, it's hard, always been hard to describe that, but on that video I'm going to give you, it was done on 8mm, so there's no sound. And when Wayne took it, he's a guy I flew with, when he got it from Billy, they put it on VHS and they put it the soundtrack Good Morning Vietnam over it. So that's what you hear when you watch that video. And it runs for about 30 some minutes, and then they have photos that Billy and Wayne took. They were slides, and they put that on there to go through a lot of those pictures. But it best explains it. The best way I can explain it is you're flying along, your helicopter gets shot down, and it goes down. It can't fly. The first thing they're doing, they're calling Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. I've heard those calls, and you hear on the movies like Mayday, Mayday. I've never heard it was always Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Aircraft sign, Mayday, 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 where they were at and that stuff. And hurry up, somebody's got to go out there and get it, because either they need to be rescued because they're on the ground, and sometimes the rescue was taken care of because the Hueys would have other Hueys with them. They'd come down and pick up their own people, and then the aircraft would sit there, and then you're heading out that way, and we'd get there a lot of times, somebody'd already have this, you got to hurry because the Vietnamese are coming. And so they sit there, pound, pound. Who's going to get there first, us or them? Hurry up and get there, fly in. Then the flight engineer would instruct the pilot which way to move, how much, and lower an aircraft till you get down. And what we did, we had a thing called shepherd's hook. It was about a 8 to 10 foot aluminum pole with a hook on it. We'd stick that down, and the guy would put this donut that's on a strap, circular thing. And we pulled up that way we didn't have to get real close to it, because I know what that felt like. I'll tell you that story too. We'd hook it up and then tell the pilot it's hooked, and then he starts lifting up till he got it, and he got it, and then he'd pick it up and he'd guide him till he gets up, and then depending on what the obstacles are, you're clear, away we go. And then same way coming back, you set it down where we take it to get it, and then you get slack and strap, and you tell him to release it, and he holds the button, and he doesn't let go until you tell him to that it's dropped off, because if you let go, the hook would come back up and it wouldn't let go, so it drops off, it falls off. But the story on that, what that feels like, Mr. Sham. Let me say something here. for the people in Columbia City. I was over there one day, and Mr. Schomp, he was the officer in command of the recovery team, which was the flight group. He said, "Lehman, do you know where Line Street is?" And I'm thinking, "Where's Line Street on this base compound?" I said, "Then Line Street, Columbia City." "Yeah." He says, "Well, that's where my mom lives. Darlene Schomp. She was the librarian at that time in Columbia City." So I thought that was kind of neat, run into Mr. Schomp. But he was flying one day as the aircraft commander, and we needed to get fuel. There was nobody to hook us up to get fuel, you know, because we had to drop this airplane off and rehook it up. Nobody's around, but what we done. So we set the aircraft down, this Huey, go over, get fuel. I didn't, because I stayed with that helicopter we left on the ground. My job was to crawl back up on the rotor mast, and when my aircraft came, is to hook up this hook, and they're going to pull me back up through the airplane, and we're going to be gone. Mr. Schomp says, "Don't you worry or panic about a thing." He says, "I can hover for half hour if we have to. I will not leave until you're in this airplane." So I'm on top, sitting there on top of this rotor mast, my legs wrapped around it, and this Chinook's come down. Oh, it just looked like a giant monster coming down. I didn't know it felt like a dead end. Get a hook, throw my hands up. Dixon and Montgomery are starting to pull on me, and I'm only this far in, and this thing's going up and leaving. Till they can get a hold of the back of my pants and pull me all the rest of the way in. I said, "Yeah, I thought you were going to leave till I was in,"
But they got you in.
yeah. Then there was another experience like that in the end of November 1967. A Caribou, Air Force Caribou, crashed. It hit a mountain just south of the airfield there along the coast. Killed everybody, and I helped do the body bags after it zipped up. And this, you know, you ever heard the term bag of bones? Mm-hmm. I mean, the guy said, "This is one of the nurses, you know, I could hear the bones rattle." And the smell of it, I could not eat meat unless it was really, really tasty. After I'd start to gag, you know, that was one of my first things about, you know, smelling. There's nothing stinks worse than dead human. Dead animals smell, but humans are the worst.
Well, they probably had been there a while.
It was 3 days before we got the bodies, and then
weather.
they thought maybe the one engine had reverse pitch and they hit the mountain. Later on, as I joined the Air National Guard, became a flight engineer, and started learning more of that on that fixed wing stuff and that type of flying, I knew that didn't happen. The guy just made a mistake and hit the top of the mountain, you know. So they wanted that engine, and the only way to get to it down in the jungle is we have a lot of straps, and we're going to through all these straps already hooked to the airplane, and somebody will take what they call a bicycle link, which just hooks the straps together, and haul it out of there. But who's going to hook it up? I'll do it, you know, crazy man. And they said, "How are we going to get you out of there?" I said, "I'll ride on it." I was going to jump up on this big R-2800 engine. I'm going to ride on it. This is going to be fun. And you know, because we're going to fly out over the cases. What if we have to drop it? Well, we're going to fly out over the ocean. It says, if you have to drop it, I'll jump off of the engine just before we hit the water. You know, you're flying about 100 and some knots, 300-400 feet in the ground. I'm a great swimmer. 19-year-old, you don't think about that, how hard, you know. I jumped off high dives, but and you think back, as boy, that would have really been stupid. Of course, the older guys said, "No, you're not going to do that." And they finally found somebody to take care of that problem. So I didn't have to do it, but I kept waiting for King Kong to jump out of that. It looked like a King Kong movie. It was a cloudy, overcast day, and the clouds were swirling down through the blades, and I kept wondering when he was going to jump out and get us, you know.
And how long did you stay in this,
Nhon,
Nhon?
I was there 14 months.
14 months, so over a year.
Yeah, man.
They didn't let you come home as often? Well,
I chose not, no, actually don't come home. The tour was for 12 months, but I stayed over there because by joining to be a pilot, I only had a 2-year obligation. And if I came home with less than 90 days, I could get out. So that's why I went ahead and stayed. And I never went on R&R because I wanted to save my money to buy a new car. And at one time, my uncle Charles Lehman was there. He was a medic. He also was a Korean War veteran. He was further down south. And it was in the month of February, and I wanted to go down and take an in-country R&R. And it got so complicated. Are they gonna give you a place to stay? You know, have you made arrangements? How you gonna do for transportation? So it just got so complicated, can't do it.
You never
So I
wanted to do
didn't-
it?
No, I never did it. It was just too much
So you never went on
complicated.
R&R at all while you were there?
No, I decided, I'd rather save that money and use it to buy a new car.
Where would you go if you were, I mean, you didn't get to go south to see your uncle. Where did most people go?
I think the majority of them went to Hong Kong or Thailand. Some went to Australia, and I can remember one guy went to Hawaii, and he jumped a plane, back to Reno, and got married. Not to do.
Oh, you weren't supposed to do that?
No, you weren't allowed to go back continental U.S. And he was my flight engineer at that time. I was back in the early beginning. And of course, he come back, then he had a dilemma because he's losing money. He's married. But was he going to get in trouble? But fortunately, the air crew, we had officers that were in charge of their cover. They were pretty decent because we made some mistakes, just like this particular guy. They took care of it. And I remember this guy named Hound Dog Wilson. What a nice guy he was. We were getting ready to go on a hot mission. And Fallis's father was at Pleiku. He was in the Air Force. He had given him a Thompson machine gun, like a World War II vintage. And a machine gun, to close the bolt, you pull the trigger. Well, I remember Johnny loaded it up, you know, we had some extra sidearms, and I'm watching him, and I can just see it in slow motion. He pulls that trigger, and it just slides so slow. He fires the round off the gun inside the helicopter. Oh, man, so we're out scrambling. It didn't make it all the way through. It hit a heavy stringer and put a big dent. He kept part of the bullet, and I kept the other part. And so we didn't tell him what we did because we didn't want to risk the mission. Then, of course, afterwards, he finally has to tell him. He goes in, Mr. Wilson, can we talk? Well, sure, Faust, what are friends for? Well, we might not be friends after I tell you this, of course. And they just let it go.
This was inside the helicopter
Yeah.
that went off? How many other people were in there?
Just Johnny and I at the time.
Oh, well, okay.
So we hadn't started yet, but, you know, they were pretty decent about it.
Okay. Where'd you go from there?
From Nhon, actually I got to see a lot of places. I went all the way down as far south as Vung Tau and Bearcat, and all the way up to I took a picture of the DMZ when we were leaving. I remember we landed one time, and I said to Mr. Wilson, I said, where are we? You know, there's nothing around out here, you know, rigging up a helicopter. He says, well, on the other side of that bush is Charlie, we ain't going any farther. I said, what are we doing standing around here with the weapons and the airplane, you know, because I pretty much believed everything. It's just like, I remember one pilot would always say, see those, he'd tell new guys, see those green trucks down on the road, those are ours. Those blue trucks are Charlie's trucks. And I said, well, why don't we just shoot the trucks? Why can't we do that? You know, things like that. And one thing about, I always felt, you know, I'm sure it was the Lord watching over us. We had a charmed life on this particular helicopter. There were 3 of them. I flew one mission on one. Mine was broken. I grounded the night before, and they come and woke me up in the morning. Guys at Blown Song were needing ammunition. There was fighting going on up there, and so mine's broke. I woke up the other 3 crew members on the other helicopter and let the other gunner sleep because I'm going with them. Flew out to depot, and we're putting ammunition on there, and I'm taking these crates, throwing them in the back here. Then after we take off, we look at it, it says grenades do not drop.
Oops.
But when we came in, then it was just starting to break light as we rolled into Bomb Song, and they must have thought there was Guns a Go-Go coming because they quit right then. And the last thing happened, Huey fired a rocket and took a guy out of a bridge. The Guns a Go-Go, there were 4 helicopters, and that was their job, was assault. They had 250 caliber machine guns on each side, 1 in the tail, 20 millimeter mounted on the outsides, some rocket launchers, grenade launcher, and then some of the guys had machine guns where they threw mortars out. That's what they did. They went out there and tore things up. And I think the Chinook, we lived mostly off of that reputation. But like I say, we come into Bong Song, and they quit, and we land, and we're starting to unload all the stuff, and I'm running. I'm dead tired now. sweat's running out of my visor and the helmet. The rest of the guys in the helicopter, they can't take it. They're standing there trying to catch their breath. And these infantry guys are helping me unload this weapon stuff. Me, I'm too proud to let them know that I'm a weak. And I sat there just dying, helping load it. I'd get out there, get back up to the gun, leave. Yeah, John Wayne all the way, the sweat running down. But I didn't want them to know I couldn't take it. They needed that stuff. And I had a lot of respect for those guys. I remember looking down when we was flying, I thought, I'm glad I'm not one of those guys that has to walk. Oh, at least I get to fly someplace.
That would be the infantry.
Yeah, and I have some friends that actually came in after I left, was out there at LZ English, was at Bong Song. And well, one of them's got cancer, one of my best friends, and he was at the Air National Guard too, but listen to some of their stories, like, whew. And probably one other story, it was kind of show you how the mind of I just turned 20 during Tet, and of course they tried to overrun every place in there and didn't know what was going on. I remember in the month of May of '67, we at Nhon, we had a major motor pool depot, ammo depot, and POL, and they came and tried to get that. And they only got two. I can't remember what they got. I think it was the motor pool and maybe the ammo. I don't remember. I just thought they were coming back to finish the job because we were ignorant of what was going on at the time. But the crew chief and I were back behind the helicopter. We had a bunker and had the machine gun pointing to the north, and I said, now, when they come, I'll start shooting, and you keep pumping this water on this barrel and keep it cool. When the can's empty, you pick up the M14, shoot, I'll reload the can, then we'll go back to doing this again. But I remember a round came through, went by my ear, I heard it go whiz by, and it went like that. I thought I was pretty fast, because I ducked and missed that bullet. Stupidity now tells me that that bullet was long gone, and I could never figure out how did that make it through all the buildings in the company area, out to the flight line without hitting a helicopter and go by my ear. I could never figure that out. And then in 2003, Wayne told me what was going on, because he was up in the company area and he could look out of the bunker and see it. There was a sniper up in a church tower, and he'd fired on them, and they finally had to take a grenade launcher to get him out there. So what happened is he had shot, and I probably must have moved just, probably only thing the Lord's going to, angel, move your head a little bit, just enough so that his shot missed. Because if I had known there'd been a sniper, then I would have never stuck my head up again. I'd have been useless for the rest of that time. Ignorance, that's what we like used to say in the flying thing, going along fat, dumb, and happy. Don't know what's happening.
If I understand this right, this base you're on, you didn't stay on that base. You were.
Well, we flew places like that, and we might stay
places.
overnight somewhere, but that was where all my clothes and stuff.
Okay, that was where you were based, but you might have to go out to different areas, different
like
bases.
one time I stayed at Baku for 2 weeks, and Walter and I, and sometime we go to Vung Tau, might be 1 or 2 nights down there, pick up parts or someplace.
And you would fly the helicopter, the Chinook?
I got to fly it one time on a test hop.
Okay,
But I was actually the gunner, crew chief, and flight engineer. As somebody left, we just kept moving up in position.
Okay. So it's not that you actually, I don't know if you drove is the right word, but you were on that.
Yeah, as a flight member.
The flight member on that. And these other places you went to, that's how you actually traveled?
Yes.
Okay. How often did you have much turnover? People coming and going?
The biggest turnover probably was not long after I got there, because Walter and I was the new guys, and they split us up on these 2 helicopters, and then Montgomery comes along and some more, because these guys have been there. They came over with it on the ship, this company, and these helicopters were basically brand new. They were 1965 models, and I used to think, I wish I could have a new one. Well, I had 400 hours when I got on. I didn't know what new was until I got in the Air Guard, got to see fighter planes that had thousands of hours on them. And pretty much most of those people was there until, I can remember the ones that were there when I first got to, of course, they were gone. And Montgomery, and then me, and then the rest of them started filtering out after that.
It says that you received some, on your biography, you've received some medals. You said 7 air medals.
Mhm.
What's an air medal?
Air medal, to me, is probably one of the most beautiful medals. It's got the prettiest color, gold and blue ribbon, and it's got this, it's like a sun shield with an eagle coming down. And that can be done with a Valor device, DV device, or what they done is in combat, they had a 25-point system, 25 hours, 25 missions, combat assault, earned an air medal. Once the two was together, it might be 26 hours before you got your 25 missions, and then drew a red line on the paper and you start again. Then they had what they call direct combat support. It was only worth half as much, so each hour was worth a half hour, each mission worth a half mission. Then they had operational combat support, which is only worth 1/4. So operational combat support would be 100 hours, 100 missions to get one.
Okay.
And
So
that's how it went.
basically, it's what you were doing the missions you went on compared to the number
You
at
got it.
that time. Okay.
What you were flying.
Was your flying. And 3 REF?
AEF, Armed
AEF.
Expeditionary Forces. That's for Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia,
And
for
that, was
Iraqi
that when
freedom.
you were in
The Air National Guard.
International Guard? Okay. And we'll get into that here in a little bit too. And meritorious service?
Meritorious service.
Meritorious service. And Vietnam service for like shot in Vietnam, and then the global war on terror, and that's recently, right?
Mhm.
Recently, okay.
That was the last Armed Expeditionary Force I was on before I retired.
And when was that?
Let's see, when did we go? That was, let's see, what was that? I think it was in July of 2004, and then we come back, it was September 11th when we got
Okay.
off the airplane.
So it's very recently. I mean,
Yeah,
well, comparatively,
2004, yeah.
compared to your other service. How'd you get involved in that? I mean, did you leave the service after Vietnam?
Honestly, I liked the flying, and my most favorite job I've ever had in my lifetime was flying in Vietnam. I didn't like the Army. I just didn't like the way they treated people. I don't think they treated them right. So I got out, and my dad was in the Air National Guard. He's the one that kind of talked me in to go check it out. So I went over there, and you can enlist for 1 year if you were prior service. My obligation, 6 years, was over with. And see if you like it or not. I said, man, this is great. I like this. It's totally different. And that's where it went from then on.
So you were in the service from right after high school for 6 years, or in the regular service, regular Army?
Yeah, it was 4 years of inactive. Then I
4
had a
years of
9 months
inactive.
break, and I joined the Air National Guard.
Okay.
And I stayed there for good. I joined in June of '73 and took a full-time job there in February 1974.
In the Air National Guard?
Mhm.
Is that the one over in Fort Wayne?
Yes.
Here? Okay, over by the
122nd
high
Fighter
school?
Wing.
Not the high school, the airport.
Yeah.
Beverly, okay. And you had a full-time job there? What kind of things did you do there?
It'd be the same thing as military. It's hard to explain to people how the reserves work. Air Force calls them ARTs, Air Reserve Technicians. National Guard, Army, and Air call them technicians. In other words, they are civilians working there. But in the National Guard, Air National Guard, even though you're a civilian paid by the hour, you're required to wear a military uniform while you're working.
Mm.
And you're required to be in the military to have that job, and it's supposed to be the same job that you have in the military. So basically what it is, they've got something going on for continuity, and then for the ones that just come, what they call unit training assembly, weekends, summer camps, to help train those people and keep things flowing. So
Okay, so that's what
I
basically
never
we
knew
do.
that was going on. I just thought they were out there, and my dad was working out there full time. And yeah, this is what I want to do.
Okay. Yeah, because I think most of us that don't know any different think of the National Guard as the weekend people that go out on the weekend and do some training, then once a year or whatever that they do that. Okay, so you left Vietnam when?
Well, let's see, it was May of '68. Got into the States in the evening, Mother's Day, whatever that was, somewhere around, it's close to May 3rd. I think it was May 12th or May 13th.
Second Sunday in May or whatever, yeah. And what year was that?
1968.
1968. So you're there almost 2 years then, right?
No, actually 14 months.
14 months, okay.
Yeah, because I went there in March of '67.
And you came back here, you're still in the service, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
In active reserves when they
In
let me
active
go,
reserve.
but they always said, we still own you. So
They
don't
do.
be doing something wrong, because, you know.
Yeah, they do own you.
And they said, you know, but fortunately at that time the draft was going on, so there was probably not much chance of being called back.
Yeah, I think then they did a lottery system, I think it started in 68, didn't it, or somewhere around there?
I don't know, because once, I don't know where I was at, but as soon as I finished that computer programming school, my stats went from 1S to 1A, just
Okay.
like that, so.
So, you had some time then between the Air National Guard and when you actually came back from Vietnam. What were you doing then?
Let's see, I started doing that computer work at Brotherhood Mutual,
Okay,
and left there and worked a couple weeks for the Columbus City Light Company, and then got a job running a computer for Precision Plastics when it was out on Swihart Street. And finally ended up out at the Weatherhead Company, and I was working there as
did anything that you learned in the military, any kind of training, help you with any of your jobs after that?
I would say, because one big thing was safety, observance. You know, so you're always observing things, and you're always watching out for safety, and always thinking,
Okay,
you know, and their experiences. I thought it was pretty tough back then. I thought I had it tough. I know people had it tougher. If I could do it again today in this brain I'm in right now, it'd be a breeze, because I've got experience, and I know a lot of stuff they were telling me was lies, and I could just, you know, when you mature, you understand more. And
were you married before you went in the service?
no,
After the service?
after.
Okay. So you didn't, well, how'd you, but you had I know you had your dad, and I don't know if your mom was around. Did you get to communicate with them much?
I wrote letters.
You wrote letters? Okay.
And
I know during World War II, they had a thing called the V-mail. Was it anything like that, or was it just the regular postal? Was there a charge for that?
no, and it was airmail too.
And it was airmail?
It was, you just wrote free up in the corner, and they knew by looking at where it was coming from that it was free. Then they had this thing called Radio Mars. A couple of guys that do that, where they would call back and there's a delay, and they'd be talking to somebody on the phone, and they'd be getting it on the radio there. And
You just couldn't pick up a phone and dial home?
oh no.
You know, couldn't do something like that? Sounds interesting. Did you join any of the, like the VFW or the?
I joined the VFW in South Whitley when I came home, probably in the month of May of 1968. Still a member there.
Still a member there?
And it's
Still participate?
not that much. One of my high school buddies I run around with, Jim Schrader's the commander down there. I've been down there a couple times, but
Were there any benefits for veterans when you left the service?
school.
School? They did send you to
I did
school?
take some advantage of that, because I went to computer programming school for a year.
Okay. All right. When you, okay, we already talked about that. Did you have anything else that you wanted to show us over there? Any of the pictures or anything?
I figured if you want, you can look at the album, which he's
Okay.
taken off there. You can have it then, and then I have a now picture, which this was taken there after I retired, because I never did take a photo since I joined the Army to begin with in my dress uniform.
Okay.
And like I say, this is pretty much the last, well, this is not the last military, but this is the last overseas trip I was on. The last military thing I did, they let me launch an airplane and took a video of it. We were down at Tyndall Air Force Base against the F-22.
And this is in
That's in Qatar.
Qatar. We haven't
the
even
place
talked
was
about that yet.
called, Al-Udeid. We used to call it Do the Deed.
How'd you wind up over there?
Well, the Air National Guard, Air Force Reserve are basically owned by the United States Air Force. Same way with the Army Reserves and all that stuff. And they have to take turns and help out too. What the tour was usually like 90 or 120 days, just like going to Kuwait, and it was shared. Either 2 or 3 units would share the tour, and they'd share the airplanes. Like Kuwait, we shared with group out of Texas, they sent so many airplanes, we sent so many, and this depends on which ones are able to get there without breaking, that's what ends up in that country. And then they would do part of the tour, and then we'd come in, so like that when they're at Qatar, went over there at the beginning, we did, let's see, I was there 7 weeks, and then
And that was in...
no, I was there during the middle because it, boy, I don't remember. Let's see, how'd that go? Because I remember they'd said things. Oh yeah, that's right, because Atlantic City was there from New Jersey, was there the first third, then Burlington, Vermont was there the next third, and then Fort Wayne took the last in it, and then we packed everything up to come back.
And that was in '04 or?
Yeah, '04.
'04, okay. And you were there for 3 months?
No, now there's some people took and volunteered to go the whole thing.
Okay,
I only took the Fort Wayne section, and I was only there for 7 weeks.
for 7 weeks. What kind of things did you do when you were there?
Sit around.
Sit around?
Burn cigarettes or something, you know, and drink water.
So they might be doing too
I worked
much.
at midnight to noon, and I'd usually eat, sit around, see what's going on, then go to bed and get back up, eat supper, head back out south into the field and work. I was in maintenance control then, so that's...
Were you working on the aircraft then?
No, I didn't actually work on the aircraft. I might help tow or do something because
Okay.
I was qualified, but maintenance controls, we're the ones scheduling
Ah,
the work
okay.
and stuff like
Okay.
that. That's what I ended up my last 5 years in the Air National Guard,
International
running
Guard.
maintenance control.
Okay. We're about to sign off here.
Okay.
About time, but did you have anything else that you wanted to tell us about? I mean,
No,
that you wanted to get
I
into?
thought, well, see, remember I said I failed the color vision test of flying, and I thought when I come back to out of state to get Army, I'm done. I'd taken another color test over there, and I almost passed it, and Culbertson was standing behind me, and he seen me switch 2 numbers around, and that's what caused the failure, but we had a C-131 here at Fort Wayne, and I went out and did a flight attendant for them, and they liked the way I could handle people, so I did that. Well, naturally, I failed that color test again, because we had discussed this before, because it was going to affect my job, and somebody had brought it up because the colors on the fuel lines and everything, but basically, Greenlee gave me a test, and the eye doctor says, he can't do this, and he said, what color's that pencil? And I told him, that's red. What color's that tablet? That's white. So what color's that folder? That's green. He says, well, I can't explain it. But I did pass it once.
did you?
Yeah, it was always different each time. I just see things different than other people. But there was another guy out there did the same thing. He'd see 2 sets of numbers, but he was smart enough he'd always ask, which numbers do you want? And I always thought, that looks about the best. And I'd get him messed up. But Mr. Schomp used to say, I don't think Lehman's colorblind, I think he's ignorant. And he'd always say, just keep challenging him. But, so that's the way it
Some
went. But,
people
and I
take-
finally got a pilot's license because,
Did you?
well, I'll just take a Farnsworth lantern test. I was living off of they gave me a waiver, they took me up at night and did me a light test off of lights from the ground and on the airfield. They took a flight engineer, or flight surgeon from Jackson, Michigan, come down, we left at night, and we're flying around, he'd say, what colors, and then started quizzing me on the airfield, the tower and stuff, and I passed. He said, give him a waiver. And I remember one flight surgeon says, you get out of the military, you're gonna need something else, so give me a Farnsworth lantern test. And the first time I took it, the colors ran together because they were fuzzy. You needed glasses. It says if you need glasses to read or to see, you need glasses to take his test. And the guy says, don't make a difference. Well, it did, because when I borrowed somebody's glasses to take the in-flight test, some prescription glasses, I think see better. I was able to pass the test,
Yeah.
but
Some people, just the word test just throws them off. We'd like to thank you then for coming in
Okay.
today. It's been very informative. We will take a look at your pictures and probably use them this year at the celebration. Thank you for coming in.
okay.